Canada is huge, the second biggest country on Earth. More land than the U.S., more lakes than the rest of the world combined. It borders 3 oceans. It spans 6 time zones. But here's the shocking part. More people live in California than in all of Canada. And over 80% of Canadians live squeezed into a tiny strip near the U.S. border. The rest of the country? It might as well not exist. Massive regions with no roads, towns without hospitals, villages without running water. You can fly for hours over Canada and see nothing. So how did this happen? How did one of the richest, safest, most advanced countries on the planet become a frozen ghost empire? Why is no one talking about it? And what if Canada is sitting on one of the greatest missed opportunities in modern history? This isn't just a geography lesson. It's a warning. Let's break it down. Canada looks like a superpower on the map, but most of it isn't usable. The country is dominated by the Canadian Shield, an ancient rocky landmass that covers nearly half of Canada. It's beautiful, remote, but terrible for farming, useless for building, thin soil, endless lakes, bare granite. Only 7% of the country is suitable for agriculture, and most of that is already used. The rest? Forest, rock, swamp, ice. While the U.S. Midwest became the breadbasket of the world, Canada's interior became a geological museum. This isn't land waiting to be used. It's land that fought back every time someone tried. That's why Canada's population is crammed into a southern ribbon near the U.S. border. It's the only part of the country that behaves like a place humans were meant to live. Cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's expensive, relentless, strategic. In many parts of Canada, winter lasts 6 to 8 months. Temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius aren't rare. Pipes freeze, roads buckle, fuel costs skyrocket. Construction grinds to a halt for half the year. Even in cities like Winnipeg or Edmonton, winter doesn't just slow you down. It's a daily survival challenge. And further north, you're in the Arctic. You need flown-in food, diesel generators, satellite internet, and backup plans for all of them. Climate didn't just discourage development, it shaped how the country thinks. Canada didn't just settle near the border because it was close to the U.S. It did it because it was the only zone where the climate didn't try to kill you. Zoom in on a population map. You'll see a strange thing. Almost every major Canadian city, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, Calgary, is located within 100 miles of the U.S. border. This isn't random. It's where the soil is better, the winters are shorter, and the rivers flow toward the Great Lakes and the Atlantic. Settlers came here not because they liked the U.S., but because this was where the land finally let them stay. Over time, cities formed, then roads, then infrastructure, and everything else, stayed empty. There's a popular myth that Canada is rural and spread out, but the reality, it's one of the most urbanized countries on Earth, and almost all of it hugs the U.S. line like a lifeline. In most countries, roads follow people. In Canada, people follow roads, and if there isn't one, they don't go. More than 60% of Canadian land has no permanent road access. Whole regions of Quebec, Manitoba, and the Arctic are only reachable by plane, boat, or ice roads. Temporary paths built on frozen lakes. Some towns rely on yearly supply flights. Some run out of fuel if planes are grounded too long. Others still use outhouses and diesel generators. The cost of building roads through permafrost, swamps, or granite, millions per kilometer. And for what? A few hundred people? So governments don't build them, and no one moves in. The cycle repeats. Canada doesn't lack population because people are lazy. It lacks infrastructure, and the price to catch up is staggering. Here's the twist. Canada isn't just empty. It's hyper-urban. Over 80% of Canadians live in cities. Not because they love skyscrapers, but because it's the only viable way to live. Cities offer centralized heating, emergency services hospitals, reliable electricity grocery stores, with flown-in food in winter. Try doing that in the Yukon alone. In Canada, the city isn't just a preference. It's a shelter. And once the big cities grew, they absorbed everything. Immigrants, investment, infrastructure. Meanwhile, rural towns withered, and the great Canadian wilderness became more myth than memory. Canada isn't just wide open, it's compressed by nature, economy, and fear. America conquered its interior. Canada avoided it. In the 1800s, both countries expanded west, but where the U.S. saw farmland, railroads, and manifest destiny, Canada saw permafrost, rock, and risk. The U.S. built highways across deserts, settled states like Montana and North Dakota, developed remote military bases in Alaska. Towns sprung up around mining, ranching, and transport hubs. Canada built a transcontinental railway and then stopped. The difference wasn't just climate. It was will. America subsidized settlement. It created laws, land grants, military posts. It built the American West. Canada settled the edges, the bottom edge. There's no Canadian equivalent of Salt Lake City or Denver. No major city inland. Just a scattering of small communities and thousands of miles of untapped space. Canada is what happens when a country looks inward and then turns back. Canada is rich, but inconveniently so. It has the third largest oil reserves in the world, vast deposits of uranium, nickel, copper, zinc, forests that stretch for millions of acres, over 20% of the world's fresh water. But it also has no roads. The riches are buried in the north, far from ports, rails, cities, or even electricity. Mining companies look at maps and drool. Then they look at logistics and walk away. The cost of building a road, airstrip, or power station in Nunavut or northern Quebec is astronomical. Some regions rely on diesel flown in by plane. Others don't even have year-round access. In theory, Canada should be a resource superpower. In practice, it's stuck in a paradox. Wealthy, but unreachable. That's why most of the country's natural resources remain underground, waiting for a future that might never come. The Arctic isn't just empty. It's strategic. As climate change melts the northern ice cap, new shipping lanes are opening. Countries like Russia are already building ports, deploying military forces, and exploring new energy reserves. Canada, which owns over 40% of the Arctic archipelago, should be leading. But it's not. Canada has fewer than 10 icebreakers. Most are decades old. Radar systems in the far north are outdated. Military bases are sparse, and many communities lack even basic infrastructure. Meanwhile, Russia has over 50 Arctic-capable ships. China has declared itself a near-Arctic state, despite being 1,000 miles away. The U.S. Navy is increasing Arctic patrols. Norway, Finland, and Denmark are investing billions in polar defense. And Canada? Still debating road projects from the 1990s. If the North is the next geopolitical frontier, Canada may find itself surrounded in its own backyard. What if Canada had invested in its interior the way the U.S. did? What if Churchill, Manitoba, had become a major Arctic hub? What if the North had roads, rails, and real towns, not just resource camps and airstrips? Norway built tunnels through frozen mountains. Russia built cities in Siberia. Australia built desert highways. Canada had money. It had opportunity. It had reason. But it chose caution. It chose to concentrate, not connect. And now, building the North would cost 10 times as much, politically and economically. Canada isn't trapped by fate. It's trapped by decisions made long ago and never revisited. Ask a Canadian what the North means, and you'll hear the same thing. Freedom, nature, wilderness, pride. It's printed on their money, sung in their anthem, etched into national mythology. But most Canadians have never been there, never will go, never even seen it from a plane. The North is a mental landscape, a symbol, not a lived experience. It's as if Canada's vastness is more psychological than physical, a mirror that reflects who Canadians think they are, not where they actually live. And that has consequences, because when a nation mythologizes its emptiness, it risks forgetting to fill it. What if the emptiness isn't permanent? Climate change is redrawing the map, melting permafrost, lengthening growing seasons, opening rivers to navigation, and while the world burns, Canada's north thaws. Suddenly, land that was useless for farming could support crops. Communities cut off by ice could get year-round access. Mineral-rich rock could become viable to mine. Add to that, renewable energy, Starlink internet, drone logistics, prefab modular housing. Technology is bending the rules of geography, making the unlivable livable. But none of that will matter unless Canada acts, because climate advantage isn't automatic. If Russia, China, or the US get there first, Canada's window could close before it even opens. The North could be a new frontier, or a missed opportunity again. Canada is an immigrant country, always has been, but immigration doesn't fill in maps. It concentrates. New arrivals go to where life is already working. Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal. They don't move to Nunavut. They don't pioneer the North. They follow jobs, family, transit, and housing. And Canada doesn't push them elsewhere. There's no northern settlement strategy, no real incentive to decentralize, no effort to break the pattern. So the South gets denser, housing gets tighter, traffic gets worse. Meanwhile, the North gets emptier, but no less expensive. Canada imports people, but it doesn't redistribute them. Canada's North isn't truly empty. It never was. It's home to over 600 Indigenous communities, Inuit, Dene, Cree, and more. But most live in isolated conditions. No running water, no local hospitals, no affordable food. Entire villages powered by diesel flown in by plane. And yet, they remain. With culture, history, identity, resilience. They're not guests in the North. They are the North. Any future that Canada builds in the Arctic, whether for defense, resources, or settlement, will run through them. They're not an obstacle. They're the foundation. Forget that, and Canada risks repeating every mistake of its past. Let's say Canada finally decides to connect its North. The cost? Massive. $10 billion in roads, $30 billion in clean energy, billions more in housing, schools, hospitals, emergency services. That's if things go well. If they don't, the roads melt, the permafrost shifts, the power lines snap. Late infrastructure isn't just expensive, it's risky. The longer Canada waits, the more expensive it becomes to fix what was never built. Emptiness is cheap at first, but long-term, it's the most expensive option of all. Canada is empty because of harsh geography, relentless climate, strategic caution, a psychology that romanticized wilderness over settlement. But the world is changing. And in a century defined by climate, migration, and security, emptiness might become a weakness. The question is no longer, why is Canada so empty? It's, what happens if it stays that way? If you found this video insightful, subscribe. We cover the hidden logic of the world's quietest places and why they matter more than they seem. Because sometimes the most important places on Earth are the ones nobody lives in.